Listen up, people. You asked for it, you got it. We proudly present the Gktech Z34 370z G37 V36 steering angle kit. You heard that right. Gktech has gotten with the now for all you ballers out there running Z34s. The infamous box shimmy of the shiny black box, and this is what said shimmy box contains. Starting with the dust boots. The Heims are PTFE lined, so you don't need to run these, but you definitely can. Next up is the tie rod and stud washer and nut, which I'll gap more on about later. Next in the kit, you get 2 long AF tie rod extenders. As science has determined, that's what you need. Next, you get the steering bracket assembly, aka the part that makes the magic happen. This time with Ackerman Adjustment for your driving pleasure. The bearings are a common size and can be easily replaced, and you get a nice set of schematics to aid in the install and torque speckage. Onto that elephant in the room, i.e. the Ackerman Adjustment I so casually mentioned earlier. To adjust the Ackerman on these kits, remove the bolt. You will now see this insert. If it is facing inwards, it means you'll have more Ackerman. More Ackerman means more lead wheel and less trailing wheel. If you want to change the Ackerman setting, take both inserts out, flip them facing outwards. You now have less Ackerman. Please make sure that both inserts are oriented the same direction before reinstalling the bolt. Once you've made your choice, mirror for the other side and you're set for that part. Now to install this fresh set of amazing, head down to the knuckle of choice and remove the split pin. Then remove the tie rod and nut, winding it all the way up but not off to protect the threads for when you bring the hammer down. Gently, of course. Once it drops, remove the tie rod nut and the tie rod from the knuckle. Now move on to removing the strut nut and bolt. Get that loose and off. Then remove the lock stop bracket bolts as shown right here and get the bracket out of the car. This is said bracket naked. Nissan installed factory fun stoppage, and we don't have time for that. Slap the sucker in a vise, grab your safety gear and a grinder, and cut along the welds on either side of said fun stopper. Once both sides are ground off, give it a tappy tap, clean up any pokeboys sticking out, and give her your best 27-layer paint job including flake and clear. Then look at that, you're all grown up and ready for full lock antics with your boys. Head back to the car and slap the newly freed up bracket back on. Toss in the 3 bolts that hold it in place, zap them down, then lift the strut up and pop the strut bolt through. Now install the nut and thread it all the way down. Bust out our #1 favorite tool and torque the bracket bolts down to these specs. Now move on to the strut nut and torque it down to these specs as well. It's time to head down to the lower ball joint and remove the split pin, zap the ball joint nut off, and just let that sucker dangle. Now grab the bracket assembly, line it up with the ball joint stud, and thread the ball joint nut back on, leaving it loose-ish for now. Then head back up a few inches and install the tie rod end stud as well as the washer and nut and zap that on down. Now head back down and zap on the ball joint nut itself. Now because the bracket is a bit thicker than not having it at all, you will need to clearance the nut, that's what she said. So line it up and mark the nut where the hole on the stud is on both sides and take it over to our 17th favorite tool, the vise, and use a grinder to cut a small slit, then use a tap to clean the threads to make sure they're dialed. And this is what it will look like when it's all good to go. Thread it on, zap it down, then torque to the specs shown right here on the screen. Now toss the split pin back in and spread them legs, baby. Head up to the tie rod end side of things and torque that sucker down to these specs as well, making sure not to forget torquing this bolt to these specs. Next, head to the inner tie rod, support it, then loosen the locking nut. Now, remove the tie rod end from the equation, as we will be putting on this fresh Gktech extender instead. Spin that sucker all the way down to get max thread companionship, then install the extender to the inner tie rod, supporting the extender and slowly but surely spinning the inner again to get max threads engaged. Whilst eyeballing it straight, support the extension in the middle and tighten both locking nuts on either side, all whilst being on the horn with your favorite alignment shop to get it actually dialed in. Now, before they actually get it dialed, make sure the bearing is running centrally and is not cocked up or down. The last thing you want to check for is the droop clearance. Make sure nothing is contacting, as you don't want to have issues with bind, I promise. Wow, you now have enough angle to toss in sick backies with ease, all whilst looking stylish AF in your ultra current drift car. This is us driving non-current drift cars and loving it just the same. In the immortal words of everyone on YouTube, please like, share, and sub. If you can't install these, please have a professional do it and reach out to us with any questions you may have here. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and Shimmy Boy Zach with another Gktech How To. Peace.